Hello all! As you can hopefully tell from my intro here, today I'm going to be looking at some more coolers for my AGP HD 3850. This is to answer a 14 or so year old question asked by people commenting on how terrible the cooling is on the Sapphire version of the 3850, so I set out to see what options there are as I happen to have two of these cards. In a previous video I replaced the stock fan with an Arctic Cooling Accelero L2+, which works fine. But I was sure there was something better out there, so I did some eBay trawling and came up with these. First I got an Akasa Vortex Neo, which was very cheap and was new old stock. Next I got a fan-free Arctic Cooling Accelero Twin Turbo Pro. I planned on testing with and without fans, the same as with the Morpheus in a few minutes time, but unfortunately the mounting pins were not wide enough to fit through the PCB of the graphics card. If I want to test that at a later date, I'll need to drill some new holes in it for the mounting standoffs, which I will not be doing for this video, and effectively disqualifies it from testing. And finally, I managed to snag a RAIJINTEK Morpheus 8057, which is massive. First we need to remove the L2 Plus from the 3850 so other coolers can be fitted, and then of course wipe off the thermal paste to make sure it's ready for a new application and another cooler. The Vortex Neo. The warning sticker needs removing and a quick isopropyl alcohol wipe to remove any residue, but before we do anything else, a test fit is in order to make sure it fits. The holes line up perfectly, but there's a problem. The heatsink towards the back of the card is about 1.5 mm too tall, so the cooler doesn't sit flush. At some point I'll need to remove this and grind it down a bit so this cooler can be tested, but not in this video. So with that one disqualified, now it's time for the RAIJINTEK Morpheus 8057. As you can see from the marketing waffle here, it will fit and cool a 2080 Ti or Radeon 5700 XT, so a 3850 should be a cinch. With its 12 heat pipes, this cooler claims to be able to cool a 360 watt TDP card, and the 3850 is only 75, so it should have no problem. Here I've already fitted the bracket so it can be mounted, but something about the surface caught my eye. The previous owner had this on a 2080 Ti and apparently used no thermal paste as it left an imprint. Oh well, it won't clean off no matter how hard I scrub, so I'm just going to ignore it. There's plenty of clearance from the mounting bracket for my homemade RAM sink, so that can stay on, and now we need to apply another generous glob of thermal paste. Some people plop on a blob and hope putting the cooler on will spread it around, but I prefer covering the whole chip surface. Now I'm flipping it over and putting some spacers on for the back bracket, then making sure they sit correctly, then positioning the card on the cooler so it can be screwed together. The spacers are so I don't squish that thing that looks like a plaster on the back of the card. It's a thermal pad for the bridge chip that makes this card work in an AGP slot, so I don't want to damage it. It's a bit of a fiddle to put together, but once done, it all sits nice and flush and we've replaced the cooler. One of the cooling methods I'm going to test is this old Titan Dulex holder I've had lying around for years. You can pick them up pretty cheaply and they house a couple of fans and a speed controller. The speed controller that controls the fans then plugs into one of the motherboard fan headers. Okay, time to get on with the testing. The stock cooler on this card runs at an idle 43 degrees and doubles to 86 when fully loaded, so really anything will be better. My testing methodology is to get hardware info up with its sensors info showing for the CPU and GPU thermals, and then to run an ancient version of Furmark at 1080p for 5 minutes to make sure everything gets well and truly cooked. And off we go with our first test. First up is the Arctic Accelero L2+. It has no heat pipes and is just an aluminium heatsink with a fan. It's incredibly quiet though and has no mounting or clearance issues, and if you can find one, it's a great cooler replacement for this graphics card. As we can see here, the temps are better than stock, but not wildly so. 7 degrees off idle and 14 off maximum load, but it is very quiet. Let's see what the Morpheus can do. First, I'm going to run the benchmark with no fans cooling the heatsink. We have 46 degrees idle and 74 load temperatures. Remember, this is only with case airflow, so no active cooling. Next up is cooling using the Titan Dual X. Notice I have a GPU brace to counter the sag from the weight of the Morpheus. The first test will be with it set at its lowest speeds. That takes us to 42 degrees at idle and 66 at load. Now let's turn the fan controller up to its maximum and try again. Run through the test, and when we get to the other side we have idle temps of 34 and a maximum of 57 degrees. That's pretty impressive, but I'm sure we can do better. Now I'll pop on a 120mm case fan and see what happens. Okay, now we're down to 33 degrees idle and only 50 at full load, but can we do even better? It's now time for full-on crazy cooling. 2 120mm fans. Now remember, this is for cooling cards that use up to 4 times the power, and I'm probably not using the best fans for the job, but hey, look at that! A 32 degree idle temperature and only 45 degrees at full load. I think we need a chart to see exactly what's been achieved here. So, I think we can all agree the stock cooler is rubbish. The L2 Plus does a much better job and is fine for everyday use, but if you want to keep your prized AGP 3850 cool at load, you need something bigger. Using the Titan Dual X at its top speed is impressive, but slapping a couple of case fans onto the Morpheus 8057 cooler is frankly ridiculous, making the difference between idle and fully stressed temps a mere 13 degrees. So we have a clear winner with the Morpheus. It's a fiddle to mount and costs a pretty penny, but it's absolutely worth it for keeping this card or pretty much any other card cool, I'd imagine. If you want to get one, a quick shopping search tells me they're in stock for only £39.36 from Waterstone Home, or up to £65 from other online stores. Right, that wraps up this video, and now I'll need to think of something for the next one. Okay, bye bye!